All righty. Well, welcome to the Quixotic Heights, where dreams take flight. Today, we're going to step through the veiled gates of imagination and into the rich spellbinding world of the City of the Magicians. And this is a series that blends political intrigue, ancient power, and the deeply human costs of wielding magic. So, joining us today is Peter Gribble. He's the brilliant mind behind the immersive fantasy saga. He's a master world builder and philosophical weaver of myth and morality. Peter crafts tales that challenge the boundaries between control and chaos, light and shadow. And whether you're a devoted fantasy reader or a curious creative, this conversation is for anyone who's ever wondered what it truly means to create magic on the page. And so, with that, welcome, Peter, to Quixotic Heights. How are you?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Amy. That's a wonderful introduction. Well, I'll have to write that down.
We'll provide you with a transcript. How's that?
Oh, thank you. Wonderful. My goodness.
Well, tell us a little bit about your quixotic dream. What was your big, quixotic height moment?
The thing that really started the series happened decades ago when I was a little boy. I was 9 years old, and I was very fortunate to live in France from the ages of 8 to 12. And I went to an international French school for diplomatic corps kids and NATO kids. And so the first thing we were told, my mom told me the first day of school, um, there was a war, Germany lost, you're not to talk about it. That's it. And so I was like, "Oh, okay." And that was basically a form of courtesy in the schoolyard and in the classroom because we had all sorts of nationalities there. The mornings were strictly French American. Wow, do you learn fast? Um, and then the afternoons, we would all separate into our separate portables. The German kids would go off to the German portable. The French would stay where they are. The Brits, the Belgian, and the rest of them, and the Dutch. Anyway, the nice thing about being in Europe is that you can hop in a car and travel to 5 countries in a day if you so
Wow.
choose. Um, but by the second year, my parents had gone through the war and clearly had lost people, friends and whatnot, and they wanted to see the Normandy Memorial War site, which is quite large. And so we drove off there, and I was stunned because the war was never explained to us, my brother and myself. And so I was surrounded by thousands of little white crosses stretching into the horizon. And I just said, oh my goodness. And my mom was trying to exercise my very weak um, arithmetic skills by asking, oh, and how old was this one as we stood in front of each little cross? How old was this one when he died? And the numbers always ended in 1942, 43, 44, 45. And, uh, and they were all dying in their early 20s or late teens. But then my mom said, oh, and how about this one? And the numbers were odd. Um, the birth date, the death date was 1917, and the birth year was 1890 something. Mommy, the numbers are wrong. And she said, that's because he died in the First World War. The First World War? There were two wars in the same place? I was flabbergasted into silence. Um, and to make a long story short, I just realized there was something horrifically wrong about all this commemorated death. And it sat with me for decades. I never thought to write about it. Um, but years later, as I read the essays and speeches of Martin Luther King and the Satyagraha movement of Mahatma Gandhi, that was quite successful in the end to kick the British out. Um, I realized that the pacifism versus barbarism had to be explored. And so this was the initial premise, decades later, to City of the Magicians. What does a pacifist, nonviolent city-state do to prepare for a barbarian invasion coming in 6 months?
Wow. Wow. That is
Yeah.
incredible. And I can't believe that that stuck with you, all these years from your childhood. You said 8 to 12 was it that you were,
Yep. It
wow.
was, I was 9 years old at that particular event, and it just, something in me woke that day and just said, this is just profoundly wrong, all
Wow.
this waste. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about your books. I think you have three books right now in the series, or
Yep. Books one, two, and three are all out. They've all been published, and amazingly, books one and two. Book one came out in 2020. Book two came out in 2022, and book three came out last year.
Mhm,
Sorry, 25. Yeah, last year. And
mhm.
books one and two have won gold medals for best literary fantasy from the Book Fest, which was quite amazing for me. I just thought, my goodness.
Yeah, that's great. It's a great organization and great contest for sure
Yeah.
for writing. Okay, so give us your little elevator pitch for each one of those books. Tell the listeners.
Okay. I can read from the back of book one. Actually, it's probably better if I use a book backgrounder. Um, a journey without departure is the traditional term for a telepathic sending. It is a talent few can perform, yet this is the strategy the City of the Magicians, non-violent pacifists, without army or weapons, hopes will mitigate the barbarian invasion coming in 6 months. The plan could work, but then maybe not. Sass, the young man chosen to educate the barbarian, can only think, me? Sendings? They've made a mistake. Lalia, a city librarian searching for her dead lover's vanished manuscript, is ensnared by a secret society planning to collaborate with the same barbarian. Um, Attempts to extricate herself from the blackmail, double dealing, seduction, and betrayal force her to realize her final treachery could very well destroy her. So on, the council strategist is fully aware a shadowy opposition lurks behind the scenes, but is stymied as to how to lure it out into the open. He should remember one of the basic tenets of tactics is mythology. Methodology is seldom prepared for surprises. Both Stas and Lalia are pawns in the strategies of others, and it only takes a pawn to change the game.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Tell me more about your main character. How did you come up with this person?
He's sort of a quiet little scholarly person, sort of like me, but very different. Um, he is not based on me, but he and I would share similar interests. I think he's far more serious than I am. Um, I like to be more positive and find the jokes and the humor in the situations. Um, Lalia, also, I have a certain sympathy with her. I have not been entrapped into a secret society. But it was a very interesting premise that she is trapped and realizes she has a choice between life or death, and she chooses life. But the consequences and the compromises that um, she has to live with, and yet she buries her integrity, keeping it alive as much as possible, and in total secrecy, even in certain cases from herself. And it
Right.
forces her into extraordinary choices.
Lovely. Wow. See, that's what I love about writing is the the power to create these characters and give them so many different dimensions, right? And then giving parts of ourselves into these characters. Um, can you tell me a little bit more about how you combined your fantasy world with events of the real world?
Um, I read a lot of history. I'm very fond of the saying, "Truth is stranger than fiction."
Mhm.
It's that very strangeness that I find absolutely fascinating. So, reading court memoirs. Actually, I'll just turn my screen here so you can see. Um, um, those books are various editions of the court memoirs of the courts of Europe. And reading some of these, you say, oh my goodness, what was going on here? Um, so it's quite fascinating. But I also listen to the characters themselves. They will tell me sometimes, oh no, I'm doing this. Or wait a second, I have something to say. Um, so I do have a structure, very much a structure, but it's pliable. If the character says, no, I'm doing this, and or wait a second. So it's a curious form of structure, and yet listening through the dynamic, watching the dynamic. There's a very interesting process that even though you've created a world, there's a certain amount of world building. Then once it's established, then within that, there's a fair amount of give and take. Um, and, uh, and the thing is to listen and watch for that process. There was one period where Sass, my principal character, um, he's found out some very difficult news, and he's going to go and mope up in his rooms. And
Mhm.
I realized, then this isn't very. That doesn't make for very good reading. And uh, and so he comes into the house, and out of the blue, um, he hears a voice, Sass, and it comes from above, and it's his aunt peering over the balustrade on the third floor. Come upstairs to my suite. I need to talk with you. Came out of absolutely nowhere, and it became a much better chapter because she inserted herself. She was always going to be there, but she just stepped right in front of me and said, um, you're going to listen to me. And so,
Yeah.
yep, you pay attention to those things. It's a very
Yeah.
interesting process.
Isn't that a very interesting thing about fiction or even just memoirs too, or nonfiction? Because
Yeah,
characters do speak to us, right? And they
yeah,
have their way of telling us exactly what needs to be told from
yeah.
their lens. So, can you tell me, was it the ant or maybe another character in your series that kind of surprised you in terms of how they came forth and demanded attention?
That was one. There were others. The first three books were originally one book.
Mm,
And my poor publisher said, "Oh my goodness, this is far too big." It was 1,200 pages. And then when I realized, okay, how does this happen? And and suddenly, boom, it underwent what I like to call a literary mitosis or cellular division. It
mm,
just very easily broke into three. Um, but the ending for the book, when it was just one book, was a bit soft. And so I wrote it out in very loose form. And then my little voice said, okay, now that you've got that out of the way, write this. And wow, the final chapter for book three just stunned me. It was one of the best writing periods where I wrote for 10 hours straight, no
mm.
breaks. And it's when the writing grabs you by the throat and throws you to the ground. Um, and it was such a wow chapter. I was writing also for my partner, and when he read the last chapter, he said, "Don't change a word." It was one of the best things I'd written through the entire manuscript, and so I didn't. But it took an additional 5 years to raise the level of the entire manuscript to the standard of that last chapter. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So,
Okay. So tell me a little bit about your writing journey and who your publisher is, how you went about getting your publisher.
okay, well, I've written things before, and I used to write for magazines. That's a very good writing exercise because you have a word count and a deadline, and
Mm,
it's a very good discipline. Um, and so I made sure I wrote good copy so that the editor, when they saw it, they just said, "Oh, thank goodness, I don't have to do anything with this." Um, and so it was, as I say, it was a good exercise. But then when I started writing City, the moment I started, this was something that I knew it had to get published. I'd written novels before, but they were fine. But I spent 5 years looking for an agent. Oh my goodness, and writing endless query letters, um, which was also a good exercise. Um, but in the end, after 5 years of either automatic responses or the 3 or 4 actual answers I got from people, um, this is very interesting, but we find that you do not match up with what we're looking for at the moment. So I had to go with self-publishing. And I
mhm,
found a local, I'm in British Columbia, and just across the, um, the strait on Vancouver Island, there is a lovely publisher called Telwell Talent. And I found them online, and I think, oh, well, I'm close enough to check them out. And I met the people there, and I met my editor just as he was about to move to PEI. So I thought, oh, good timing. And we clicked, and he was moving with his girlfriend, and he's now back here on the West Coast. But he and I understood what was required. Um, it was when I found out that his father had I think it was 50 dictionaries in different languages. I thought, oh, my type of guy, because I love languages, and that was also part of the world building for City. Um, so yeah, and I could only have high praises for Tell Talent. They've done an exemplary job on the website and the design process and the covers. Um, yeah, so
Okay. And did you have creative control or any input when they did the editing and the cover design and
ab-
stuff?
absolutely, I had the final word. But
Good.
like listening to my characters, listening to the plot, saying, "Wait a second," I listened to them as well. The suggestions were stellar. They were pretty good, and that was why I liked Simon, my editor. He and I clicked. Of course, it may be his ability to adapt to every client,
Mm-hmm.
um, but no, I would have high praise. I mean, the um, this is the first cover. The second, when I saw the results, the thing is, I got to choose. This is book two within. Um, when I basically you're allowed to choose the picture, and you can say what type of lettering, what font, put this over here. Remove. Can you remove this from the photo? All that sort of stuff. Yep, they were able to do it, and you have various rounds to determine what you want. And this is book three, Quickening. Um, but yeah, so they did an exemplary job. I mean, it's something I could not do. I'm not very skilled
Yeah.
manipulating
But
things on.
so you mentioned that you initially, after 5 years of looking for an agent, you self-published, and then
Mhm.
you took those off the self-publication when you found your publishing house. Is that right?
Sorry?
So
And,
you originally self-published the book. Is that?
oh, so via them. I did not publish it myself. I published it through them, who are an independent publisher.
Oh, okay, okay. I
Yep.
thought you self-published after.
Oh, there's
Sorry.
no no, there's no way I can do something like that. I know how to turn my computer on and off and enter, delete, and that's about it.
Yeah, right. Like we all have our talents and our expertise. We write, we let other people do the editing and
Mhm.
the cover
Yeah.
design, all that stuff. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm also very aware of my deficiencies.
It's good. It's a humbling thing for sure.
Oh
Like
yeah,
I
yeah.
totally agree with you being a publisher and an author myself. But how do you balance good versus evil in your antagonist and protagonist? Because humans are flawed, characters are flawed.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Um, Good and evil. I don't name them as such.
Hmm.
Um, um, there are people who are struggling with premises that are limiting, and yet even so, they will like deficiencies. Um, they will sort of they want certain things, and how do you get them when you think you're not going to? So the underground movement called the Fifth School. Um, this is the um, this is the old way of writing the number five, and
Uh,
but it's a clue. Um, um, So yeah, I don't really discuss good and evil so much. It's what do people want and how are they going to achieve them? And so
yeah.
this is why the various strategies sort of they intermesh on one level, and yet they also are opposed to each other as well in book
Mhm.
one. And in book two, let me just read in the first line here. Uru, the barbarian invader, has arrived. How can the pacifist, non-violent city of the magicians contain him when one faction appeals to his heart, the other to his ambitions?
Hmm.
Um, so, yeah, and it's the struggle about everyone gets a little bit of what they want, but everyone also has to compromise. And that's the problem that is explored um, in book two. And also
Mhm.
at the same time, the institutions that are renowned for their magic, their ability, um, they seem to be failing. At the same time, there seems to be a rebirth happening.
Hmm. Got it. So this was originally one big book that was broken
Yeah,
up into three.
yeah,
When you were writing this whole big, piece,
right, right.
how were you able to keep track of, the community and the characters and their backstory, across this entire epic fantasy novel, but then also when you had to break it into three pieces, was it was there any cohesive bridging that needed to be done between the three?
Um, Everything was there. And, that's a good question. Once I wrote that last chapter, as I said, I had to go back and edit. It was a 5-year process, edit the whole thing so that it scanned. But things are pretty solid. There were a few corrections that I was picking up during that 5 years period, but by and large, everything was there. And because I had spent the previous 13 years writing it, um, 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 my memory was pretty sharp where it's concerned. I also take notes. I have a reporter's notebook um,
Hmm.
beside my pillow every night. I also carry this with me whenever I go out. So sometimes I will have no, oh, there's a word I like, or this is a good name that I can invent, or oh, so and so will have this dialogue about something. So the notes get transcribed from there into books 4, 5, and 6, which is what I'm working on now. Um,
Mm.
the it was pretty solid. Part of it was due to the fact that I had established very good writing habits. I was writing 5 to 8 hours every day without fail
Wow.
during that 13 plus 5 year period. Um, that's a secret to that is to having a very regulated life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Things that we can only dream about.
Well, the other thing was my partner of many years was going through a long physical decline. He had been a smoker and a drinker, and had caught up with him. So heart problems, stroke, diabetes, and so that keeps you, as a principal caregiver, that keeps you at home. But the book was also written for him, so that each chapter as it got written, I just say, "Oh, Robert, what do you think of this?" And she's like, "Oh, okay. Maybe you should change this." So he was my first editor, um, and book one is dedicated to him. So yeah. Um,
I would love for you to read an excerpt from your book.
okay.
If you're willing to share.
Yeah. Here's chapter one, the
Okay.
meeting. Okay. A pale blue fly, right. A pale blue 5, the obsolete form, was painted on a crier pillar. Looks like a bony hand, don't it? The man remarked. You know its meaning, lettered, sir? Number 5, lived the old way, said Sass. Not used in generations. A young girl volunteered. Seen it in other places, too. Other places? The upper ridge so far, on the house walls. No paper. Marian's seethed someone. Indeed. The girl asked, Letter, sir, what does it signify? Afraid I don't know, but thank you for showing me. Unusual, isn't it? I'll let others know. Sorry, you'll have to excuse me. I'm going to be late for the temple service. You're late now, smirked the girl. Sass grinned. You're right. Be well. With a nod, he resumed his walk. He was slowed by a second 5, splashed on the east wall of Netwa House, and further on by another, more rushed than the last. In the distance, another blue 5, large and illegible, lured him towards the temple. He shivered.
Wow. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for that reading. That's so special.
Oh,
It's always a
well,
treat
thank you.
to listen to authors read their piece, and hear the voice, right, of the
Mm,
characters with you.
thank you.
Are you going
Thank
to
you.
do an audiobook, you think, of your books?
Several people have asked. I'm not sure I'm the voice to do it. Um, um, it's a lot of reading. Um, yeah, I will definitely look into that. And because a number of people have said people are drifting, many people are drifting away from reading, and because they're doing other things and like to listen. So, but the
Mhm.
voice is very important. Um, People have advised don't do AI voices yet. They don't always get the pronunciations right, even the typical English vocabulary. So wait until it matures if you want to go that route. I think I would like to have a person who knows the series and knows where it's going, and can modulate their voices to well, this is Lalia's voice, this is a young girl's voice, this is an
Mhm.
old strategist voice, and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
that's so audiobooks can make or break, right? Sometimes you can have the best written book and story, but if the voice isn't there, that can definitely
right,
do.
right.
So
Do you do audiobooks as well? Have you had your books done audio? Really?
yes.
Okay.
Um,
How did you find it?
So I put out a call for auditions. So all three of my books in my trilogy, the Snow trilogy,
Mhm.
um, are now on audiobook, ebook, and
Ah,
well. But I did put out an audition, a call for audition, right? And
right.
I got a lot of people submitting their samples, reading a script that I chose that had various characters, voices and emotions. And it was super important for me to find the right Vietnamese female, feminine
Ah,
voice that can
right.
also not
Right.
only speak Vietnamese, but speak it from a South Vietnamese,
Ah,
accent,
interesting. Right.
the northern
Right.
accent, right? But also
Right.
being able to speak as if it's a broken English because, parts of the story are either interacting with an American or somebody, and so she's speaking English, but with a Vietnamese accent, if that makes sense.
Wow. Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so
No, that's fascinating.
it's challenging. It's challenging to find the
Yeah.
right audiobook narrator, but once you find the
Right.
voiceover actor or actress,
Right.
then it's gold. And I believe in paying them for their talents. And I
Right.
agree with you. AI is not where it is right where it needs
Right.
to be for audiobooks. We did look into that as well, and yeah, it just the quality wasn't there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
But who
okay.
knows? In a couple of years, you might be able to push button, say Vietnamese, South accent, female, but also broken English and fluent American English,
Yeah.
and of course there are American accents as well. Um,
Oh yeah, there's
so,
so
yeah,
many different kinds of
yeah,
accents, right? Southern accent, Cockney English, whatever. But uh,
yeah.
and I believe, that in time, definitely AI is definitely getting more and more robust each day. So,
Right.
but let's talk about some of the maybe authors or philosophers or anybody that is in your world that maybe shaped your writing voice. Were there anybody that inspired you?
Um, yep. I think the first book that I read, I must have been 14 or 15, that made me realize, wow, what a voice. It was Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca.
Mm,
Um, the central character has no name. You never find out her name, and it's entirely from her point of view. And but she's neurotically self-obsessed with what other people think and her own um, nervousness, self-deprecation, deep uncertainty about what she's doing.
mhm.
Mesmerizing piece of writing. But then I came across Isaac Asimov's Foundation trilogy, and there's a peculiar thread of nonviolence and not quite pacifism, but that went through that as a central thread going through the first three books. Um, and then the Dune series as well by Frank Herbert. I was very interested in long evolutionary, cultural evolutions, how people in a culture matures and evolves, makes mistakes and then gets back on track, or maybe not. Um, so those things began to intrigue me. But again, I started drifting towards more nonfiction. Um, um, because I wanted to make sure there was a verisimilitude or veracity to City of Magicians, even though it seemed to be quite a different type of culture.
Mm, mm. Okay, so without giving too much away, can you give us a little teaser in books 4, 5, and 6? What happens?
Well, that was the other thing about the last chapter in book three. When I finally wrote it, um, and I just realized, oh my goodness, this is not the ending of the series. This is a portal to the fact that things have changed so radically. I guess I could read part of the bottom of the back cover of um, um, yeah, I won't give too much away.
Yeah.
Um, but, um, how could the city of magicians, avowed pacifists, embroil themselves in a warrior's battle to the south? For the nefarious fifth school, it's the lure of becoming an imperial capital. For Puru, the barbarian leader, it's proof of his divinity. For others, it's an exciting adventure. All this skip, skip, skip. And then at the bottom, Quickening concludes the City of Magicians' first trilogy, where complacency and compromise have brought citizens to the cliff edge of change. They ask themselves, do I slow, step away, or jump?
Mm, that
And
sounds.
so, yeah, all three books end with a combination of resolution and cliffhanger. So,
And cliffhanger, you said. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. As it should. As it should.
yeah,
We want
yeah,
to keep turning those pages and going on to
yeah,
the next book in the series. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. So
So,
what do you
so
want readers to get from your series? What's the takeaway?
basically, keep an eye on your life. Be alert to those curious things that suggest things to you. Like in my case, characters, plot arcs. Do I really want to go in this direction? Think twice about your decisions.
Mm,
Have fun with life, but be careful that it is does not harm others. Um, and be respectful and reverent to the existence. One of the themes that comes out as Sass begins to wake up to what is going on, um,
mm,
he realizes that there's something larger than anything that he has thought about. And he realizes he may be beginning to see the underpinnings of the sentience of reality itself.
mm.
And so, yeah,
Intriguing. Intriguing. So you mentioned that your partner Robert was a big part of your writing with books one, two, and three.
yeah.
How much of Robert is in four, five, and six?
I would say a fair amount. He passed in 2020. We were together for 43 years. Um, and one of the reasons why I wrote Singing Magicians is that um, I could never discuss certain subjects with him and having to do with spirituality, religion, all that sort of stuff, because he had a tremendously deep-seated hatred of religion. Because when he was about 9 to 11, 12. A friend of his became quite ill, same age, a kid his age, and his parents refused medical intervention, which shocked him. And he saw his friend eventually turn into a vegetable. And it was because of religious beliefs. And he conceived this tremendous fury at religion. So it was a subject I could not discuss. Um, so bit by bit in City of the Magicians, as he declined, he was all there, even after the stroke. It compromised his speech, but very little else. I like to say that he had all his marbles, but he was just playing different games with them. Um,
Mm,
but so so each chapter was a little bit more. We can begin to discuss these things without triggering his antipathy towards spirituality. Um, but he was also politically very, very smart. He knew Canadian and American politics inside out.
mm,
It was fascinating when there was a Democratic or Republican national conventions and stuff. He knew these people. He had actually gone down, I think it was in 68, and he had gone to both the Republican National Convention and the Democratic National Convention, and he was on the floor and met all these people. So he knew his stuff inside out. Um, so the because of the new premises in books 4, 5, and 6, I think it would delight him down to his toes.
mm.
Because
Absolutely.
it's about political strategies and whether
Yeah.
they're going to work or not. Because you're basically having two cultures that are somewhat antithetical to each other, having to force to interact.
Mm. I feel like it's the next new like Game of Thrones, like the next best thing.
Hmm,
Yeah,
okay.
it sounds amazing.
Well, thank you, thank you.
Yeah,
I hope there aren't
absolutely.
as I hope there aren't as many deaths and um, uh, yeah.
Yeah, you gotta have it
They're,
all. Gotta have it all.
yeah, yeah.
Do you feel like would you ever write a prequel to your series, or do you feel like your characters and the plot are just so well developed and everything is strung along beautifully that a prequel wouldn't be needed?
Well, actually, that's one of the opening quotes in book four, um, where a reviewer from the city just says, "Oh my goodness, the first three books, they were the prequel. They were the prologue to this, the four, five, and six."
Oh, you have your work cut out for you, Peter.
Oh my goodness, yes. It better not take 20 years to write the next trilogy. I'm 74 now, um, but longevity runs in the family. So both my parents lived into their 90s. But yeah, I have to get cracking.
I love it. Well, you're a handsome 74, and I think if you're
Well,
working
thank you.
like you're writing 8 hours a day or whatever, I mean,
I was. I'm sort of
yeah.
in a partial hiatus at the moment.
Mhm.
Um, I'm waiting for things to gestate and mature. But I do write every day, and I'm just waiting for things to sort of galvanize and basically find their moment of, okay, ready to go. And it's
Mm.
not there yet. But there's some chapters that are complete, and I don't think I'll have to edit them. There's a lot of uncertain, unknown territory.
Okay, here's a hard question for you.
Okay.
If your books become a series on Netflix or HBO or whatever, who would you cast as your characters?
Um, Given the way I'm writing, they probably haven't entered the acting field yet.
Oh,
That's my cop out. There's probably I think
no
there's a
cop out.
generation. Yeah, yeah. I honestly don't know. I honestly
Okay.
don't know. So that's my cute answer. That
Yeah.
they haven't got their degrees and diplomas yet in acting and filmography and set design and everything else. But
It
yeah,
boils down to, again, letting the experts do their thing, right? So let the cast,
yeah,
the people who cast actors and whatever, let them do their job, and we
yeah.
just do the writing. Yep. Yep.
Right. Oh, I hope they will say they'll come back to me and say, Peter, what do you think of this one? I just say, oh my goodness, yes, she's perfect. Or are you sure about him? But anyway, yeah. So,
But if you had a cameo, what character or what
oh my God,
part would you
yes.
use?
I've long thought of it. It's a cameo. It's non-speaking, um, preferably shot from behind. Um,
Oh, so we
um,
can't tell it's you.
right, yeah. Um, or maybe side profile. It's an old um, it's a monk-like character who is
Mhm.
leading a small little procession of three down the main thoroughfare of the City of Magicians to exit the city. At the moment I wrote him, I was, my goodness, that's me.
Aw, that's
Yeah,
fun because
yeah,
I always think about that too. I was like, if they made a movie of my books, a
yeah,
series, what would I do for a cameo? And I always thought if you ever read the Snow trilogy, there's one scene where my characters are at the market and they're buying fruits and stuff like that. And
right.
there's a fruit vendor and she's
Uh,
sitting there squatting at her stand and she picks up a cockroach and eats it.
oh my goodness! Wow,
I was like, that's
wow,
me. That would be my cameo right there. I'll be the
wow!
one
My
who's the
God,
cockroach.
would you provide your own cockroach?
Heck yeah. I'd probably put some little butter and salt and pepper on there and
Well, there we go.
I'm just kidding.
Deep fried cockroaches. There we
Oh
go.
yeah. I mean they
Right?
deep fry everything, right? Butter and
Right.
whatever
Oh,
else.
yeah. But you need those amino acids, right? You need
Yeah.
those proteins, right?
Okay, my friend. I've got some questions for you that has to do with, what are your favorite fantasy books? Let's start there.
I would say it's basically old school.
Mhm.
The Asimov's first three books of the Foundation trilogy, I thought it was very well thought out and intricate in seeing how Terminus planet basically evolved, and they
Mhm.
were not entirely aware. They got complacent, and then each crisis that came along, Harry Seldon, the founder of the Foundation, just said, "Okay, now that you've done this, this is the next," and they realized. Oh my goodness. Wow. We didn't know we were going in this direction. I love those surprises. Um, Dune and Force, the first book, not the
Hmm.
second, and the third book. Again, that whole sense of um, surprise, and surprises are very integral to senior editions because with all this tragedy that's going on, um, that's when I have that line that methodology is seldom prepared for surprises. You think you know what you're doing, and just like, what? Oh, left field. Who would have thought? Um,
Hmm.
and so those are the principal ones, but it's also reading some of the court memoirs and stuff, and people are going along and suddenly, wow, again, left field, or the ground opened up, and or scandal destroys what you have carefully assembled, or the scandal actually reveals something about yourself that, oh my goodness, I should be going in this direction. So history is a very interesting thing. When I was researching oh, barbarians. Like, what do I know about barbarians? What are their motivations? Was there a furious mother that propelled you to slaughter? Um, was there a father who bullied you? Were you not read to as a child? Um, so I read about Alexander the Great and Napoleon, people whom we Western culture sort of looks up to, and yet from the other point of view, my goodness, they caused enormous mayhem. One of the most fascinating memoirs was written by, for me, was written by Philippe de Ségur. He was a count, and the last name is Segur. And he wrote about the Russian campaign. It's called Napoleon's Russian campaign. There's a pretty good English translation. Um, and he published it in after Napoleon had fallen, and the French just said, "Oh my goodness, how dare you write this?" But it was very feet on the ground, very, very rational, practical. This is what was happening. And one of the curious things, Napoleon amassed a massive, massive army to invade Russia, um, and he was told by several people, "Don't do it." Um, and yet he had his pride, and but he, as the march into Russia turned more and more against him. I mean, he lost an enormous number of people before his retreat. Um, but he had an interesting thing that Philippe Paul wrote down that Napoleon had this puzzle, just saying, I don't see him, the Tsar, sitting down at the chessboard. I'm still waiting to see the chessboard. He's not sitting down at it. And yet, this did not prevent him from going in and suffering the massive, massive defeat. Um, but he was playing chess, whereas Tsar was playing for his life and the life of his country. And it was a very interesting strategy that Napoleon was not prepared for. The Russians themselves burnt down Moscow, and the army, when Napoleon realized he had to turn back, um, they were forcing him to go back the way he came because the land had been ravaged. So how is he going to support himself? So very interesting. It's horrific to read, but there's an amazing rational quality to the writing of this Philippe de Sigrid. So and there's only so much violence I can read.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Wow. You mentioned research earlier. Tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about, what kind of research and process you had to do to write your series.
Lots. As I say, the books on that part. See, those purple ones.
Hmm.
Um, I haven't been able to get into that. That's called The Barbarian Invasion of the Roman Empire by Hodgkin. It's it's just so depressing. So there's only so much of that I could read. So they, those books are in pretty pristine, unread condition. Although I might return to them. But it's more what people themselves go through when they're faced with certain circumstances, like, oh my goodness, we're going to have food shortages, or I just lost my best friend in a battle. Well, what a
Hmm.
foolish thing to have done. Um,
Hmm.
um, so and yeah, so I never know where I'm going to find stuff. Sometimes it's just a sentence. Sometimes it's an event, minor event that happens to someone that actually in weird, strange ways. Um, changes their life trajectory.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the beautiful thing about books too, and our characters is it doesn't matter what genre we're writing in, there are key human elements and themes that we all can
Yeah,
relate to, right?
yeah,
Loss or joy or, pursuit of dreams, what have you. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely beautiful.
Or if you take a look at this one, the
Uh-huh.
the memoir of Catherine the Great of Russia. She was German, and her father said, "Don't you convert? Um, remember, you were always German." Well, in the end, she fell in love with Russian culture. She converted to the Russian Orthodox Church. Um, she became the darling of Russia in the end. Um,
Yeah.
and she wrote the memoir of it, and she did not hold back. She
Huh.
admitted her favorites because she had an example. The Empress Elisabetta, who was her um, mother-in-law, um, she was busily having favorites, and it was something that was never discussed, but it was acknowledged in the court. Um, but her favorites put her on the throne.
Mm. That would be a
Yeah.
fascinating, absolutely. Now
Yep.
my curiosity is piqued. Thank
But
you
then,
for that recommendation, actually.
oh, you're welcome. There's
Yeah.
another biography by Elisabeth Lebrun. Um, Elizabeth Vigée Lebrun. She was a portrait painter in the court of France of Louis XVI, and she became very close to Marie Antoinette.
Mm.
And she painted. She was a court painter, and she was fairly quick, fairly deft, and she wrote her memoirs. Um, and when France collapsed and the reign of terror came in and the Jacobins took over, and she fled, and she ended up in Russia um, in the court of Marie Theresa, who was running Russia at the point. Um, and she had these lovely little anecdotes where she was at dinner, and they all stood up when the empress came in, and instead of being very polite and using the right fork and whatever, she tucked her napkin in her front, which was everyone's, oh my goodness. And Teresa just said, oh, listen, I'm such a mess when I eat. So this is the only way. So eat the way you want. And it ended up in her memoir. Um,
Mm.
so, so her travels, Elizabeth Vigée, Vigee, Lebrun, Lebrun.
Okay.
Fascinating stuff. Yeah.
Thank you for spelling that.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Right.
French is not my thing. Um,
Okay, no problem.
Spanish definitely, Vietnamese, yeah, but anyways, are there any topics that we didn't cover that you want to chat about?
No, I think you covered them really well.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
yeah,
Where
this has been
can
fun.
readers and listeners find you to learn more?
Okay, my website is petergribble.com. Um, and the books can be got purchased at on Amazon. But if you're in the Vancouver area, there also all three books are in the Chapters Indigo store on Robson Street in
Wow,
Vancouver.
nice. I love Robson Street.
Oh, good. Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yes, yes, good shopping too.
Yes. Yep.
Well, thank you, Peter, so much. I really enjoyed our conversation,
Oh,
and
thank
I
you, Amy.
really, really appreciate you just opening the gates to the world of magic with me. I, for one, love watching fantasy. I'm not a fantasy
Mm,
reader, so this
okay.
conversation has been very enlightening for me.
Oh,
So
thank
thank
you.
you for sharing your heart and your craft with us,
Thank you.
and the look behind your work. So, listeners, as we wrap up, if you haven't yet discovered Peter's The City of the Magicians series, please consider taking a look on Amazon and getting a copy. Dive in, write a book review, because as we all know, authors love to have reviews because it helps other readers discover our work and take a chance on an author that they've never met before. So, but until next time, keep seeking your wonders and telling stories that matter, and we'll see you on the next episode of Quixotic Heights. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. and come on. Thank you.
Yes, kamkachi.